We continue now at the top of Daf Chav Daled Amud Aleph and Meseches Shevuos. This is Shevuos Daf 24a. On the previous summit, the Gemara was discussing the case in the Mishnah where the person takes a Shevuah, he takes an oath not to eat, and then he eats nevelas, treifos, shkatzim, uramasim. So over there's a machlokas tanoim in the Mishnah between the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Shimon. The Tanna Kama says the person does in fact violate the Shevuah by eating those non-kosher items. Rabbi Shimon says that the person is exempt. And the Gemara asked, why is it that the Tanna Kama says that the person is in violation? Maybe this shouldn't be considered edible food at all because it's not kosher. And the Gemara explained that we're talking b'mefarish. We're talking about a case where the person actually explicitly said he was not going to eat nevelas, treifos, shkatzim, or amasim. But the Gemara said if that's the case, so why is it that the Shevuah is chal? Those things are prohibited already from Har Sinai, and a Shevuah is not usually chal on something that's already prohibited. And so to that there was a machlokas amoraim, two approaches to answering that question. The first answer was given by Rav and Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan. They said that what's going on is iser kolel, because the person is kolel dvarim hamutarim im dvarim hoasurim. He's not only saying he's not going to eat nevelas, treifos, shkatzim, and ramasim, he's also included some kosher things in that list as well. And so therefore by iser kolel, since it's going to be chal on the kosher items, it's going to be chal, that Shevuah is going to be chal, again, according to those amoraim, Rav and Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish gave a different answer. Reish Lakish said that the reason why the Shevuah is able to be chal is because nevelas, treifos, shkatzim, and ramasim, they're only aser at a minimum shear. There has to be, let's say, a kazayis, but if it's chatzi shear, if it's less than the amount, they wouldn't have been prohibited. But when it comes to the Shevuah, so when the person takes this oath, either he's explaining, like the Rabbanan say, he's explaining that even chatzi shear is aser, so it really is being chal on something that would have been permitted, or you can go like Rabbi Akiva, that automatically when a person takes a Shevuah, that he's not going to eat something, it means to say even the smallest amount, even chatzi shear. So that was Reish Lakish's approach. And so the Gemara asked on the previous summit, why is it that Reish Lakish does not agree with the answer of Isser Kolel? And the Gemara now continues and explains, because Reish Lakish holds that Isser Kolel only applies Be'isser Haba Me'elav. It only applies by an Isser that comes on its own. But Be'isser Haba Al Yedei Atzma, but if the person causes the prohibition by taking an oath, so Lo Amrinan. So then we don't say Isser Kolel, and therefore Isser Kolel would not be a good solution in this case. And Rashi explains, Be'isr haba me'elav, what's an example of Isr haba me'elav? Kagon, for example, ha'ochel nevela b'yom HaKippurim. Let's say a person eats nevela on Yom Kippur, so really all food is prohibited on Yom Kippur. De pligi Rabbanan and Rabbi Shimon. In that case, there's a machlokas tanoim between the Rabbanan and Rabbi Shimon. De mechayvi le Rabbanan chatos. There, the Rabbanan say the person is liable to bring a chatos mishum Yom HaKippurim, because of Yom Kippur. V'af agav to have a nevela mekame Yom HaKippurim, even though this nevela was already asur before Yom Kippur. Ve'in Isr chal al Isr, so one prohibition cannot be chal, cannot take effect on another prohibition. Hacha chayil, here the prohibition of Yom Kippur is going to take effect. The Yom Kippur Isser Kolel, because Yom Kippur, that's also an example of Isser Kolel. To kodem ben hashmashot haya aser zeb ben nevela umuter b'shchuta, because before Yom Kippur, so this person he was not allowed to have nevela, but he could have, let's say, an animal that was slaughtered property. Ole Yom HaKippurim, and so now comes along Yom Kippur, and migo de itzer hagaver b'shchuta mishum Yom HaKippurim, because Yom Kippur makes the person now that he can't eat an animal that was slaughtered properly. So Itzer Nami ben Nevela Misham Yom HaKippurim. So the Isser of Yom Kippur also will apply to the Nevela. Hainu Kolel be'Isser haba me'elav. That's an example of Isser Kolel. That's ba me'elav. It happens on his own. It happens on its own. The Yom HaKippurim ba me'elav, because Yom HaKippurim comes on its own. Avol be'Isser haba me'atzmo, but let's say it comes from the person. Kilomar al yedei adam atzmo, meaning through the person. Kigon Isser Shvuah habolo al yedei diburo. For example, again, a prohibition of a Shvuah that it's through his speech that Isser is created, so lo amrinan. So there we don't say the idea of Isser Kolel. That's why Reish Lakish does not use that approach. And the Gemara continues, B'shalama l'Reish Lakish, I understand, according to Reish Lakish, Mishum Hachi, Kapater Rabbi Shimon. We can understand why Rabbi Shimon disagrees in the Mishnah and says that when the person violates the oath by eating nevelos and treifos, shkatzim, or amasim, he's actually exempt. That's not considered to be a violation. The Tanya, as we learned in a brayso, Rabbi Shimon says, Kol shu lamakos v'lo amru kezayis ela lekarbon. When it comes to these prohibitions of eating, let's say you're not allowed to eat nevela, it actually is a kol shu. It actually is prohibited. It's mushba v'yomed mehar Sinai in terms of malchus, any amount if the person eats any amount, he's going to get malchus. The whole minimum shear of kazayas, according to Rabbi Shimon, is only in terms of carbon, and so therefore, according to Reish Lakish's approach, it makes perfect sense why Rabbi Shimon disagrees with the Rabbanan. Since Rabbi Shimon says the person was already prohibited to have a kol shu, so therefore the oath is not going to be chal. And Rashi explains, B'Shlomo Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish demuki la b'chatzi shir. Again, according to Reish Lakish, who approaches the Mishnah that the idea is that the Shavuos is chal because of chatzi shir, Misham hachi pater Rabbi Shimon. That's why Rabbi Shimon says pater. The kasavar kol shunami mushba v'yomeinu, because Rabbi Shimon holds even the smallest amount he's already under oath from Har Sinai. The Tanya Rabbi Shimon Omer kol shulamakos, because again Rabbi Shimon says any amount is going to be prohibited in terms of other isurim of achila. Any amount in terms of malchus is going to be aser. Elul Rabbi Yochanan, but according to Rabbi Yochanan, again Rabbi Yochanan is the one who says that it's iser kolel. That's the reason why the shvuah is chal. My time with Rabbi Shimon de pater. What's the reason of Rabbi Shimon? Why does he say exempt in this case? Rashi explains, Elul Rabbi Yochanan demuki lo mishum kolel. And my pater Rabbi Shimon. According to Rabbi Yochanan, who says that the reason why the shvuah takes effect is because he included things that were mutter. Why would Rabbi Shimon say exempt in such a situation? My time with Rabbi Shimon de pater. And the Gemara answers, Midi hu taima elu mishum iser kolel. Again, what's the whole reason according to Rabbi Yochanan that the shvuah is chal? It's because of iser kolel. But Rabbi Shimon l'taima, Rabbi Shimon therefore can follow his opinion. The less lay iser kolel. Rabbi Shimon does not hold of iser kolel. We really already mentioned this in Rashi above. Again, that was the machlokas by Nevela on Yom Kippur. Rabbi Shimon actually disagreed. As we said, the Tanya, as we learned in a brayso, Rabbi Shimon says, ha'ochel nevela b'yom HaKippurim. If somebody eats nevela on Yom HaKippurim, pater, he's going to be exempt. Rashi explains, pater mechatos, he's going to be exempt from a carbon chatos. The lo asi kares de Yom HaKippurim v'chayal al Isser Nevela. The kares of Yom Kippur, that prohibition, is not going to take effect when you already have an Isser Nevela. Oh, a Isser Aver min hachai, or let's say it could also be an Isser of Aver min hachai im lo nisnavla mi bo erev. Let's say the animal didn't become a Nevela until Yom Kippur itself. So now you'll say there was not already a prohibition of Nevela, but still Yom Kippur is not going to take effect, because if the animal's alive when Yom Kippur starts, so that's Aver min hachai. V'afagav the Yom Kippurim kolalu. Now, even though Yom Kippur is an example of Isser Kola, Rabbi Shimon disagrees with the concept of Isser Kola. That's why he says pater. That's why he says exempt in this case. And the Gemara continues, B'Shalom Reish Lakish, I understand according to Reish Lakish, Mashkachas la belav v'hei. In this case of Shavuot over here, again by Nevelos, Treifa, Shkatzim, and Ramasim, you can find it in the negative and the positive. It has to work both ways in order for carbon Shavuot to even apply in such a case. Rashi explains, B'Shalom Reish Lakish, I understand according to Reish Lakish, Demuki la b'chatzi shir. Again, he says that the reason why the Shavuot takes effect is because the Shavuot is including chatzi shir as well. So Hainu de Mashkachas la belav v'hei. We can now find cases both in the negative and in the positive of Shevuos. To kaim alon, because we've established this is coming up, ein carbon Shavua ba. You're not going to bring a carbon Shavua ela im kein atam motzi ba lav v'hein, unless you can come up with a case that works in the negative and the positive. Techsiv, that's learned from Exeris HaKasav, because it's written in the pasuk lahara o lahetiv, for bad or for good. Demashma davar v'chilufa. Lahara o lahetiv simply means whatever it is, and also its inverse. V'hai mefarish shelo ochel chatzi shir nevela mashkachas lo nami b'Shavua she'ochel chatzi shir nevela. Let's say in the case of mefarish, which is what we're dealing over here, mefarish again means that the person specifically said that he takes a shvuah not to eat nevela. And again, according to Reish Lakish, the reason why that takes effect is because it takes effect at chatzi shir, which was not mushba v'yomed. So you have one example in the negative. The person says, I'm not going to eat chatzi shir nevela. So mashkachas lo nami b'shvuah she'ochel chatzi shir nevela. You can also have the other direction. Let's say a person takes a shvuah that he is going to eat chatzi shir nevela. Delav nishba levatel es hamitzvah. That's not an oath that's nullifying a mitzvah, because again, chatzi shir is not going to be prohibited. So because chatzi shir, the prohibition is only when you actually eat the shir of nevela that is prohibited. So you can come up with a shvuah in the other direction as well. A person can take a shvuah, and the shvuah is that he's going to eat a chatzi shir nevela, and then if he doesn't fulfill the shvuah, you can have a situation where he's going to bring a carbon shvuah. That's what it means that you can find it in the negative and the positive, according to Reish Lakish, which is a requirement in terms of bringing a carbon shvuah by a violation of a shvuah. Elul Rabbi Yochanan, but according to Rabbi Yochanan, we're talking that it takes effect because of Isser Kolel. B'Shlama lav mashkachasla. We can find it in the negative. Elohein hechi mashkachasla. But how can we find it in the positive direction? Rashi explains, Elul Rabbi Yochanan de muki lo b'shir shalem. Rabbi Yochanan says again, we're talking about where it's the full shir. Umisham kolel, and the reason why the shvuah takes effect is because he included dvarim hamutarim as well. V'al karchach b'mefaresh nevelos ukimta. And again, we said the cases where the person explicitly takes the oath regarding nevela. Misham kosher kamaisa deresh v'seifa. That the Gemara said in the previous Amud, because otherwise we have a problem from the beginning of the Mishnah. The earlier case of the Mishnah is that if a person says a shvuah he's not going to eat, and then he eats something unedible, he's exempt. So the question was, well, why? that should also apply by nevela. That should also be considered to be unedible. That's why the Gemara said in the previous Amud that we're talking about mefarish nevelos. He explicitly stated nevelos in his Shevuah. So now, according to Rabbi Yochanan, that the reason that Shevuah takes effect is because of kolel. Bishlama Shevuah shelo ochel. I understand. Let's say he takes a Shevuah that he's not going to eat. Mashkachas techayla. So again, you can find that the Shevuah takes effect. Afal gav shemush b'viyomid, even though nevel is already prohibited, it's mush b'viyomid mehar sinai mishum kolel, because as we said, we're going to use kolel. Elahain, but let's say you try to make a Shevuah in the positive direction, according to Rabbi Yochanan. Shevuah she'ochel nevelos u'shchutos, a positive, an oath that he's going to eat nevela and he's going to eat animals that are slaughtered properly. Mimashkachas la detechel an nevelos. Is that really possible that Shevuah is going to take effect, that you're making an oath to eat nevela? That kind of Shevuah will take effect? Or levatel Shevuos har Sinai, that's going to be mevatel Shevuos har Sinai. Of course that's not going to take effect. And so therefore, again, according to Rabbi Yochanan's solution, you don't have it in the positive. And so the Gemara continues and answers, Ella, rather you have to say Rava, that it follows Rava. Diyamar Rava, because Rava says, Shevuah shelo ochel, if a person takes a Shevuah not to eat, v'yachal offer, and he eats dirt, so pater, he is exempt. And Rashi explains what the meaning of the Gemara's answer is. Hachi Garcin, and here's the proper text. Ella Rava, rather it's like Rava says. And Rashi says, V'hachi Perush, and here's the explanation. Lo tishni le'el kushya dereisha v'seifa. Don't answer the question we had earlier on the previous Amud. Again, we had a question, why is the reisha and seifa, why are they different? Again, the case of the reisha is the person takes a Shevuah not to eat, and then he eats something that's not edible. There we say exempt. And then in the case of the seifa, the person says a Shevuah not to eat, and he eats nevelas, treifa, shkatzim, ramasim. So there, again, the Tanakama say liable. So the question was, why do we make a distinction? And the answer we gave before, and we've been going with all along, is kan bistam, kan b'mefarish. That in the first case, the person just in general said he's not going to eat, and so things that are not edible are not included in that Shevuah. But in the second case, he specifically said he's not going to eat nevelas and treifas, shkatzim, or ramasim, and that's why when he eats those items, it's a violation. Don't give that answer. Elakula bistam. Rather, the end of the Mishnah also, the case of nevelas, treifas, he just made a general Shevuah not to eat. Ve'ochlin she'enon ru'uyin la'achila. And when we're talking about food that's not fit to be eaten, the katani reisha potter, where in the beginning of the Mishnah again it said exempt, kiderava mifrasha, that you'll explain like Rava, kigon offer, it's talking about like dirt. She'ein roy la'achila, dirt is not fit to be eaten at all. That's what we mean when we say something that's not edible. Avol nevelos, but there's a difference between that and nevelos. When it comes to nevelos, ru'uyos la'achila, that's fit to be eaten. It's something that's fundamentally edible. Va'aryehu derevi alayu, and there's just a lion that's crouching on top of it, which again is the prohibition that you're not allowed to eat nevela. Vesulo kashamidi. Now, once you answer that, and you're not talking about mefarish, you have no difficulty at all. Rabbi Yochanan, according to Rabbi Yochanan, you're not going to have that difficulty. Again, Rabbi Yochanan is going to say that the Shevuah works, let's say, because of Isser Kolol, but you're not going to have a problem. The mashkachas law belav v'hein, you're going to find it in the negative and the positive. Af b'shir shalim, even when you're talking about the full shir. The halo ochel stomach amar, because what's the guy saying? He's just saying, I'm not going to eat. Imachal nevela chayv, and if he eats nevela, he's going to be liable. Sharei kolal bistamo, because when he just says stam, that he's not going to eat, what's included in that? Devarim hamutarim v'asurim, that includes things that are mutter and things that are asur. It includes other things as well. Umitzri asurim al yedei kolel, and through kolel, the things that are prohibited are included. Vehein mashkachas, you can also find it in the positive. To ochel stam kamer, let's say a person just says, I'm going to eat in general. He doesn't specify he's going to eat nevela. He just says he's going to eat. Umekayim shvuoso b'dvarim hamutarim, he can fulfill the shvuah with mutter things. V'im lo achal, and if he does not eat chayiv, so then he is going to be liable. So you can just simply answer, the Mishnah is talking about stam, and then Rabbi Yochanan's approach will work just fine. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Mori says, Afanon nami tanina, we learn this idea in the Mishnah as well. Rashi explains, Afanon nami tanina de nevelos ru'uyos la'achila chashav lahu. We understand from the Mishnah, from a different case in the Mishnah, that nevelos are fundamentally considered ru'uyos la'achila. Where do we see that? Because the Mishnah said, Konem ishti nenisli, let's say a person says a konem, that my wife is forbidden to get benefit from me, imochalti hayom, if I ate today. In other words, it's a condition. If I ate today, then my wife has this prohibition. She's not able to derive benefit from me. And what happened? V'achal nevelos treifas shkatzim u'ramasim. And earlier in the day, he in fact did eat nevelos treifas shkatzim u'ramasim. Harei ishto asura lo. The Mishnah says that his wife is in fact prohibited to him. And Rashi says harei ishto asura. His wife is prohibited. Alma achilahi. So we see that it is considered to be achila. It's considered to be eating. That's why it's a fulfillment of the condition, and that's why ishto asura. And so therefore, again, you see that nevelos, trefa, shkatzim, or ramasim, fundamentally, they're considered to be something that is edible. The Gemara says, well, what kind of proof is that? Hachi hashta, how can you compare the cases? Hasam over there, kaven demei kara achal, over there, again, it's in the past tense. Imachalti, if I ate today previously. So there, since he ate originally, he ate earlier. V'hadrish tabale, and then he's making the oath. The Gemara will continue and explain why that's different, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chav Daled Amud Beis.